Welcome to the Story-Eyed Podcast. My name is Brendan.
And I'm Jen. On this show, we talk about all things Williams syndrome. We're excited to share our community with you. Thanks for being here.
So, are you playing World of Warcraft, or is Jen? Is this like This Is Us sort of thing? Because you're kind of rocking the headphones. Are awesome,
aren't they amazing? Well, I was saying earlier that I injured my laptop. My laptop is in death. It's dying. And so I'm in on a new computer, and I thought that this might be better because there's more of an echo up here. And I was like, hey, Luke, do you have some headphones I can use? And this is what I got. I can take your order at McDonald's.
The McDonald's.
I can do some old school, Janet Jackson.
But
well, you can tell me later if my audio sounds better.
It's not a matter of better. You sound like, can I take your order? Are you going to use your mobile app?
Right.
It's just that it's a different quality of sound.
Yeah.
And so it's not good, it's not bad, it's just a different quality. Yep.
We had such a good podcast. OMG.
Yeah. What a great way to kick off Awareness Month. Terry Monkaba was the WSA for many, many years. And all of us have benefited immeasurably by the work that she's done. And the connections she's made and the doctors she's brought in. And
first of all, it's like I said, it's an honor to be able to chat with her. I am so thankful that she's taking time out of her retirement life to chat with us about the WSA and her time during it. And she looks so happy and rested. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so happy for her for that, because the amount of work that she did to tee this up for the next hopefully 40 years that we have in our future is you just can't thank her enough for it, and we can't honor her enough for it. And so the only way we know how is to have her on this cool show with this headphone.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
I hope that everybody watching and listening enjoys it as much as I did listening to it and watching it as it was happening.
I also want to give a big shout out to Belvoir Terrace and to Nancy Goldberg, who is the founder of Belvoir Terrace, because if it wasn't for Belvoir, Terry and I wouldn't have never met. That's where I met her and Ben. So I wanted to shout that out.
Very cool. And then we have Megan McNeil on. Megan is a wonderful. I find Megan to be a hoot.
She's funny.
Yep, she's fun.
Yeah, she seems like a straight shooter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, very much so. This is a great indication of, to me, of who Megan is. Is someone put on one of our Facebook pages, maybe the Adventure Seekers page, when will the hotel rooms be available for next year's convention? And Megan just replied, next year. And it was
well, that's true.
Yeah, and
mic drop.
Boom.
Yeah, and I love that she was like, I have 3 people to shout out, and one of them is my mom and dad, and the other one is Terry, and she didn't know Terry was going to be on, so I feel like it's a super treat to have both these powerhouses on the same pod.
Yep. Next time, by the time we do our next episode, I will have had the Chili Pepper Challenge. It is happening this Saturday. Shameless plug, because I get to produce this podcast, so I'm putting it on there. If you can't join us in person, you can watch it on my personal Facebook page, which is at joel.listman on both Facebook and Instagram. And it'll be on Bennett's YouTube channel, which is called Bennett's Channel of Wonders.
What you might need when you're doing your pepper challenge is a headset.
I could use a headset. It would be,
I have peppers.
I do have my microphone, but
that's what I need to go for. I need to go for that. Well, and you're supposed to do the bridge lighting after, so I guess.
And then the bridge lighting is that night.
If you're not at the bridge lighting, we know what's happened to you.
Yes, I am suffering somewhere as I
in a bathroom.
Yep.
You're on fire.
Oh yeah, it'll
maybe
be
this one. Maybe this one.
Oh golly.
Yeah, with the fire. Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, ow. Oh, rockets.
Yeah, we'll see. We had to order some of the super hots we had to order from out of state. So they'll get here on Wednesday.
Okay.
And it'll be fun to take a look at them. I got to pull out. Thank God. Remember the early days of COVID when we didn't know anything and they're like, you got to handle everything with rubber gloves. And,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So I still have a gajillion.
You still have to do
pairs
that.
of
Yeah.
rubber gloves. So the rubber gloves are going to finally come in handy as we handle some of these boot jalokias and scorpion peppers and Carolina Reapers, because Bennett this year has said, Dad, we gotta up it. We gotta throw down. So wsinfo.org/peppers. If you're interested, I hope it'll be a silly fun time.
Oh, I love this. Okay,
Yep.
well, I'm excited. And another good reminder that there's a lot of ways to participate in Awareness Month. You could have a chili pepper challenge, or if that's not your jam, you can share others' fundraisers.
You can do
share what they're doing.
a pickleball awareness event.
That's what Terry should do.
Merch.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? There's a pickleball set. There's a Williams Syndrome Association pickleball set available on the Williams Syndrome store.
Oh, that's cool. See, look at all those ways. Well, happy Williams Syndrome Awareness Month, everybody.
Happy Williams Syndrome Awareness Month.
Happy.
Happy.
The croutons, yeah.
Here comes the croutons. Oh, and hearts at the same time.
Yep.
I love it. All right, let's get into it.
Let's go. Well, hello, Megan. How are you?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
Doing well. I'm doing well. So for those who might not know who you are, why don't you take a few seconds to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I am Megan. I am 36. I live in Minnesota and I have Williams syndrome.
Where are you in Minnesota?
I live in the Twin Cities.
Okay. I was just in Minnesota last week.
Where in Minnesota were you?
I was in Rochester, Minnesota. Okay, cool. Are you a lifelong Minnesotan?
Yes, born and raised.
Born and raised. I love that. And we had you on the Halloween episode. I was trying to remember, were you dressed up that day?
No, I was not.
Then I probably couldn't see you in my cloud. Remember, I had that big nebulous cloud on. That was fun. Well, so now you get your own episode where you get to talk all about yourself, which is so fun. I hope you're ready. Are you ready for this today?
Yes.
Good. Well, tell everybody about just like your journey with Williams syndrome.
So I was diagnosed when I was 11 months old. I couldn't
11.
stop crying, and my mom and dad didn't know
Oh no.
what was going on, so they have to do something. So we went and I got a fish test.
Yeah.
But got that done and I got diagnosed. I have had Williams syndrome for 36 years now.
You're 36. Okay. So I do not remember. Brendan, did you also do the fish test?
I did.
You did?
I did. And those, for those who don't know what the FISH test stands for, it stands for fluorescence in situ hybridization test. It's a molecular cytogenic technique used to identify and locate specific DNA sequences within cells, which figures out Williams syndrome.
That is really impressive that you could say that because it's a very technical term, Brendan. So cheers to
I use it in my speeches when I do the medical students and stuff. So
okay, so you've rehearsed that terminology very well because that's a mouthful.
yeah, I mean, I had to look it up just for a second so I could remember what it was for this because I don't have my speech in front of me. But
yeah,
what it stands for.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that you guys would have been, both of you would have been on the newer like side of the fish test coming out because we've talked about it before in the podcast, but like
Yeah.
when before the fish test, there really wasn't like a formal way to diagnose Williams
Right.
syndrome other than some of the features. And, obviously if you had the heart condition, a doctor could, reasonably conclude that that is what you had. But then the fish test came along and it was like, then they could look at your DNA and say, we know for sure that you have this deletion. And so that's really great because then that allowed people to get early diagnosis. And just like Megan, 11, you said 11 months old?
Yes.
Yeah. So whole life you pretty much knew. How was that for you growing up? Did you have things that you had to do like therapies or special things to manage your Williams syndrome?
I had to get heart surgery
Oh, you did? Okay. How old?
when I was 7.
7. Oh, man. So is that because you had the stenosis?
Yes.
Yeah. And since then, how has your stenosis been? Is it manageable, or have you had to have more surgeries after that?
It's manageable. They accidentally nicked one of my valves. So one of my valves is leaking.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that I might need to have surgery when I'm like way older. But
Might be older, but not right now.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a common thing too, I think, in Williams syndrome is that you had it happen as a result of your surgery, but my daughter Stella has a leaky valve. And that's kind of scary when you first hear that from a doctor and they're like, you have this valve that's leaking. Oh, it's no big deal. It sounds like a
It's
big
a big
deal.
deal.
Yeah, I don't remember much of it
Yeah.
because I was so young.
Yeah.
It's kind of
But
nice that you
yeah,
probably don't remember. And is that like the main health complication that you had?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How was growing up? Have you always been in that Twin Cities area, or did you live in other parts of Minnesota?
I mostly lived in the Twin Cities. I haven't moved out of the Burnsville area. Burnsville has been my home. But when I was little, my mom and dad lived in Minneapolis. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
when I was
How was that growing up then? Like kind of take us through all of your journeys, like as a younger person with Williams syndrome, as a teen, and then now as an adult. Has it been different or has it felt constant because you've been in the same place?
growing up was really different because we didn't know much about Williams syndrome back then,
Yeah,
because it was like in the 1990s.
right. The 1900s, as my younger kid says, we're from the 1900s.
So now, yeah, so it was different. I mean, going to doctor's appointments, all the time
Yeah,
for like different issues. So yeah, it was different, but now that we are, years later, we can get more information. There is more different ideas for surgeries, like more advanced. So yeah, I just hope that I can live a long life.
yeah, absolutely. So do you remember any of I guess like that time when you were younger? Did you do well in school, like elementary school and middle school, or was that a challenging time for you?
In elementary school, it went fine. I was in all the regular classes. And when I was in middle school, it was different. I was in the special ed classes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And in high school, I was in the special ed classes. But yeah, it's like I made friends. Some of them are still my friends. Some of them are not. Yeah, like they move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been pretty easy,
yeah.
I would
That's
say.
good. That's good. And after high school, did you do anything or coming out of high school, did you go to work or did you go to college?
I went to a day program.
Okay, yeah. And do you still do that or no?
No. I don't.
Mhm. Okay, and how did you like that? Because it can be a change from school.
Yeah, it was different, but
Yeah.
I liked it. And I did have a job, but the pandemic happened and it changed the whole trajectory because I have asthma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So finding a job right now, it's difficult because my lungs get flared up
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds really, really, really horrible. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like I'm actually sick, but I'm not.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it takes a couple days to get through it, but gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, I know that for many of our adults with Williams syndrome that they were working and then the pandemic happened and that did, like you said, shift everything considerably. And in some scenarios like yours, it made it more difficult to go out and work because, like you were saying, you have some special things that you have to work around that are more challenging now in like a post-COVID environment. And then for some people, they were just like, I have too much anxiety, right? Like, because I'm scared of getting sick and I don't want to get sick, so I can't work. So I hear that a lot. I think that's a common thing. Well, what do you do now then, like with your days since you're living your best adult life?
I am at home currently. I am at home. I have a dog who is 7 years old. His
Oh,
name's Penny. He's an English Cocker Spaniel. So I take care of him and I go on errands with my mom and I travel a lot. I go to Boston a lot because that is
oh,
where my brother lives. He
okay,
is
cool.
a neurosurgeon. Uh,
Wow,
he is doing
Okay.
residency in Boston right now.
cool.
So yeah, we travel to go see him a lot. So yeah.
And who takes care of your dog when you're gone?
We have sitters for my youngest brother. He has autism and
Okay.
he's not verbal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
yeah, there is staff at the house 24/7 when we leave. So
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So are you the oldest then?
oldest and firstborn.
And you will not let anybody forget it, I'm sure. So you have two brothers?
Yes,
Yes. And you said your younger brother has autism.
yes.
Yeah, I'm interested to know a little bit more about that. How is it hard being a sibling with a disability to a sibling with a disability?
Yeah, it kind of is, but you got to push through it,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
because he has a disability and so do I, but it's different disabilities and different things that we have to take care of and all that stuff. So,
Yeah. Do you help with his caregiving?
no, I do not,
You do not.
but my parents do.
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't want to.
No.
Yeah, I sometimes sense that for my daughter Stella. Like if we have to do something for her sister, she's like, I don't want to help you with that. So I don't know if that's a Williams syndrome thing or not, but that's interesting. And your other brother is a neurosurgeon, so you're traveling
Mhm.
quite a bit to see him because he probably has no time in his schedule. I just went
No.
to Boston the first time last year. Pretty cool place.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done anything fun there?
Well, he lives like a block away from Fenway.
Oh, cool.
So
So
we
are
did
you a baseball person?
no, not really.
No. What's your sport of choice?
Oh gosh, I don't have a sport of choice.
You don't.
I just love watching the Olympics when the Olympic happens. I just watch
Yes,
that constantly. And that is happening in 2 years.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. It's crazy how fast it happens. Like 2 years. I mean, I just feel like we got winter. When do we have winter? So we'll have Winter Olympics this year, right? Does it go every like other? So we'll have winter and then summer. I can never remember, but do you like the winter or the summer ones better?
I like the summer ones because I know a lot of people in the summer ones. I mean, like I know their names, but I don't
Yeah.
know them, like personally.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it is fun when there's like a lot of familiar faces, like athletes and stuff that you get to watch. So what else do you like to do when you are at home? You go run errands with your mom?
Uh-huh.
Do you hang out with friends?
I hang out with friends, and my number one thing is naps. Naps,
Oh,
naps.
girl, you're speaking my language now. Okay, you're a big napper.
If I don't take a nap, I'm crabby. So yeah, I need my naps.
You need your naps. Okay, so is it like an every day we need a nap, or are you like multiple
Yeah,
naps a day? Okay,
sometimes two, sometimes one.
it just
It depends
depends.
how tired I am.
Yeah. Are you a napper, Brendan?
Not really. I try not to because if I nap, then I'm up all night. So that
You're already up all night. Let's just make sure that that's clear.
to be known.
To
Just
be known.
full transparency.
Like my idea of going to bed is like 8:30 and you're up until like 1 a.m.
Yeah, but if I take a nap, then I'm up to like 5.
Okay.
So
Oof.
yeah, and it's like if I try and get to sleep, I can't force myself. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So I'm just like, all right, whatever, you know. So I generally try and take a nap for just like an hour, like early in the day, so that like I don't mess up my circadian rhythms that
Hmm.
much, you know. So
Yeah.
naps are fun, but you know, not always my thing.
Yeah. Stella's a big napper. She, if given like her choice, if she was home during the day, because right now she's at school, she would 100% take a nap. And I do find that it helps her be less crabby for sure. So I was just wondering if that was a Williams syndrome thing or not. Joel says next year the Winter Olympics are in Milan, and in 2028 the Olympics are in Los Angeles. So thank you for that, Joel, because I do not keep up with that. Anything else planned for the summer?
Well, on Saturday, May 10th, we are lighting up the bridge.
Yay! That purposely coinciding with Bennett's hot pepper challenge?
No, they've been doing it for 14 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. And you're going?
Yes, me and my dad will be going.
Oh, that is going to be so much fun. Gosh, if I was only there one more weekend, I could have seen it.
Hmm.
That's too much of a bummer. I was in somewhere. Was I in Rochester? I can't remember now, Megan, but there was a building that was lit up and it had like red and green and blue. And I was wondering if it was Williams syndrome, but it probably wasn't. It was probably just a coincidence. But you made me think of that. I'm going to say that nothing is coincidence. It's all intentional and it's all to celebrate Williams syndrome. Is there anything like that you like about having Williams syndrome?
Knowing all these people that I've met over the years, I mean, going to these conventions help us learn more about ourselves, and we get to meet new people, and new people become friends, and friends become family.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of good people throughout the years. Yeah, I like the community that we have, that there's just so many of us and so little people know about us that I think that we need to put it out more so that people know who we are and what we do and how it impacts us because some of us do have serious medical issues
Yeah.
Mhm.
with having this syndrome. So, yeah, I just hope for the future that we get more people to know about it. And yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think all those things that you said are really important, especially that reminder that there's a lot of different types of Williams syndrome, right? Like the way that it manifests. So for some people, they're really friendly, or some might have more health conditions, like you mentioned, or my daughter Stella is real spicy. So there's a spicy crabby version of Williams syndrome that exists too. If only she had those naps every day. I think that's the key. Anything challenging for you, particularly in having Williams syndrome?
Getting bullied.
Getting bullied. Yeah. Bullied by people who don't have Williams syndrome or by people who do?
People who don't.
People who don't. Okay. In your community,
Yeah, it's mainly online.
the online bullying, I hate it.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I tell people, if you want to know who I am, if you want to be my friend and get to know me, you should look this up. And none of them do.
Hmm.
And it's just like, well, what am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people think that I use my disability as clickbait.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
So,
yeah, and I don't. I just want people to go online and look this up. It's not like it's not very hard to do, and it's
Sure.
very easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of people right now that are on social media who are using whatever cause that they have to get more followers or to get, likes or whatever's. And I'm not super into all of that stuff, so I don't know the terminology. But then there's people like you who have Williams syndrome, and you're just wanting people to learn about Williams syndrome and understand it so they know how they can support you. And I think that's a little bit different than some that I've seen. And I think it's really important because I know for me, as a parent of a person with Williams syndrome, the more that other people can understand how Stella's Williams syndrome manifests, the easier it is for them to be around her, right? Because
Yeah.
Stella has a lot of anxiety, and sometimes her anxiety it doesn't come out as anxiety, it comes out as anger. But if you know that Stella being angry is not just because she's grumpy, it's because she has anxiety, that is easier to, I think, for people to understand and work around and maybe just be more aware of when they're interacting with her.
yeah. The more the awareness, more acceptance, the better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and you're kind of the same way, Brendan, right? You want people to know about Williams syndrome for the same reasons. You want them to know how to support you and to support your friends.
Right. And it's Williams syndrome is just something that I have. Like, you can't get it. Like, chill.
Yeah.
Like, chill out. Like, you can't get it. It's not passable. Like, relax. It's not that serious. I don't take it seriously. Like, it's just a part of me. It will always be a part of me. And that's it.
And chill.
Like, and
Chill, yo.
chill. Either you like me or you don't. I'm fine either way. So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that should be your new tagline, Megan. People just be like, I have Williams syndrome. Chill. Chill.
Williams syndrome is the new cool.
That's right. That's right. Oh gosh. Well, as we wrap up our time, Megan, is there anything else you want to share with our community about you? Or do you want to shout out any of your friends or family?
Oh gosh. I want to shout out to Becky Kleiman.
Becky, she's so great.
Yeah, who lives in Boston.
Yep.
I haven't seen her this year yet, but hopefully I'll be able to see her soon.
Oh, good.
Shout out to my mom and dad, my brother who is in Boston, and shout out to Terry Monkaba. I haven't seen or heard from her in forever. Hopefully she's doing well. I am so happy and honored to be on here.
Not only on the podcast, but crushing it.
Killing it. Totally killing it.
Yeah, did a great job. We'll shout out to all those folks, how people can support those living with Williams syndrome in Williams Syndrome Awareness Month.
Well, you can go to Williams Syndrome Association.org and you can look up what Williams syndrome is. And if you want to donate, there is a place for you to donate. You can also go to Facebook and Instagram. I don't know about Twitter if you guys do have any information on Twitter, but and YouTube. There are a lot of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
It seems like YouTube is where most of our people go, and that's good. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to connect with Williams syndrome. You can learn about it. And I think that's the coolest thing that I took away from this time with us today, Megan, is that so many of our individuals with Williams syndrome just want their communities to know about what Williams syndrome is. So learning is the first most easiest thing you can do, and it's free. It's free. So learn about Williams syndrome. You can donate to Williams syndrome if you have the ability to do so. There's a lot of great things that we do to support our community, and the only way we can do those things is if we have the dollars. So donating is really important to us. And then join our fun events. We have so many fun events locally in everybody's communities. Megan's going to a bridge lighting in Minneapolis this weekend. There is online ways to support Williams syndrome. You can share our posts, right? Lots of people are doing posts for Williams Syndrome Awareness Month. So it's not just about one day or 1 month. It's about how we support individuals living with disabilities all year. So just taking action in your general community to be part of the disability movement, I think is really important.
Yeah.
So thank you, Megan, for coming on. So great to have you.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
I'm doing good. Brendan, you're looking great, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Terry and I have known each other for coming on 25 years now, right?
Wait, we're not that old, are we, Brendan?
So for maybe the new people that might not know, new people in the community rather, who don't know who you are, why don't you take a few minutes to introduce yourself and tell everyone about yourself?
Well, yeah, right. Well, I'm Terry Monkaba. I am the former executive director of the Williams Syndrome Association. Recently, I guess it's recent, 2 years ago, retired and was at the helm for 32 years. So I can say that the Williams Syndrome Association is near and dear to my heart. And my son with Williams, who is 39 years old now, was on a Starry-Eyed podcast recently and was just so honored and so excited to have that happen. And hey, I am too.
Oh, yes, this is like the best way to kick off Williams Syndrome Awareness Month is to have you on because a lot of people love you. You are very, very loved in our community. And I must say, you are looking great.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
You
you.
are looking great.
Pickleball and golf agree with me.
And South Carolina, right? Because you moved?
Yeah, we moved to South Carolina. Yeah, we've been here for just a little over a year, about 15 months now, and really do, love it. Have a wonderful community. So I'm, as I said, playing pickleball and golf for fun, but also now on the board of Camp Blue Skies.
Of course. You're like taking on the other things.
That's a great way to stay in contact with a lot of adults with Williams syndrome, as well as, families, which is great. I really was so thrilled when they asked me to join their board. And I'm doing some grant writing for a local agency that supports victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. So trying to keep busy in lots of ways and finding out that that's not hard to do at all.
It is not hard to do. I remember thinking, like when Stella was diagnosed, I was with Williams syndrome. I was working, like I had a crazy career, maybe not working as much as you, but I was working a lot of hours a week. And I used to joke, like, what do like people who don't have jobs do all day? Like they must be so bored with their life. And I find that I'm busier. I have so many things, like I cannot keep track of them all. And they're all things that like I love to do, but my husband is like, you don't have to do any of this. Do you know that? And I'm like, oh, yes, I do. It's really fun, but it's crazy how that happens. So I'm sure you're feeling that way. How did you decide to move to South Carolina? Because weren't you always from Michigan?
My husband is from Michigan. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm from Massachusetts, but yeah. But both of my sisters are down here. One came down 15 years ago and the other one about 6 years ago. And so, now we all live within shouting distance of each other, a half an hour or so, which is really nice because we haven't been in the same state all since we were 18. So it's really nice, to be in the same place for a change.
Oh, I love that you're living by your family. I love that. That's amazing that you get to do that. And I'm glad that you're enjoying, like I said, you look great. Retirement is good on you. It's hard to believe that people may not know who you are, but would you mind just briefly sharing like how you got into the Williams Syndrome Association, and you've kind of seen all the sides of it, right? You've run the spectrum.
I have, yeah. So when Ben was diagnosed, and as he finally, he had several heart surgeries immediately 6 weeks after he was born, and when we got home, just as we were leaving UMass, the University of Michigan, we were told that there was a doctor in near where we lived who they thought had a son with Williams syndrome. And, so they gave me a name, and I was able to come back and connect with Marty Levinson. So, that was a big deal. Those of you who are around at all in the association know who Dr. Marty is. He's a pediatrician, but also was a board member for many years, and a big part of the association. And so when we got home, gosh, I think we got home in late March, and in May or June, it was the second national convention ever of the Williams Syndrome Association. And it was in Cincinnati. So that was, driving distance for us. And so we were there, and I can remember calling and speaking to one of the parents who was running it, and telling her that we would be bringing our infant son. And we were just, well, okay, but if he's crying a lot, you're going to have to leave the session.
You're like, yes, he's crying.
Yeah, we were kind of confused by that, because Benjamin, one of the things that happened after his surgeries was that his vocal cords had been paralyzed. So for a while, we didn't hear him at all. I mean, literally, he couldn't make a peep. But I think because of all he had been through, he had had a lot of things kind of fixed immediately. And so he wasn't one of those individuals who cried, for hours on end. We were real, fortunate. Not to say that isn't to say that we didn't, wear a track in our carpeting from him, because he wanted to be strolled at all times. And so if we couldn't go outside, we strolled in the house, and we went around and around and around in circles. But anyway, we were there at that first convention, which was the WSA's second. There were just a couple hundred people there, and very, very different from what it is today. And then when he was 4 years old, when he had gotten through the bulk of the surgeries and therapies and all of those things, I volunteered to help. There was an opening for a regional person near me, and in our area, so I became that regional person. And then a year after that, joined the board and never looked back.
Yeah, we were talking with Megan, and she had mentioned that she had done the fish test, and it actually had made me think you guys like came into Williams syndrome like before that test was
Right.
Maybe it was invented, but it hadn't been like widely used yet. I don't know, you know better than me, but I just think like, was that the explosion, for lack of a better term, of Williams syndrome? Like, did you have a very small population, and then once that test became available, like, did it then just open up a ton of other families, or did it grow slow over time?
Well, kind of a combination. When Ben was born in 86, and the association had started in 83. So at that time, like I said, there were not very many families, and there was no internet and no cell phones or any of those kinds of things. So it was really much different in how we could, connect with each other. But there was an article would appear, a local child would have a good friends, and they'd end up in the newspaper. And each time something like that happened, there would be more folks coming in. So yeah, when we were told that they thought Ben had Williams syndrome, clearly, because of the heart problem that he had, which was aortic stenosis initially, and then a very much diffuse stenosis, it was pretty clear, but they wouldn't say definitively that he had it, because they just had no way to know.
No.
Yeah, and then in 92 or 4, I think it was 94, at the San Diego convention, the researchers had put together a score sheet that they felt they could give to families, and they to see if you had, there was like 12 questions, and if the child scored an 8 or better, then the chances were very, very good he had Williams syndrome. or she. And I said, we always laughed that was the very first test Ben got 100 on. He was 12 for 12, clearly. But coincidentally, at that same convention was when Dr. Colleen Morris had discovered the gene and for elastin. She had discovered the elastin deletion. And so at the same time that the docs were testing out the score sheet, there were folks there who had gotten special dispensation, allowance to take blood work from anybody who was willing to do it so that they could create the fish test. And so then by 96, this is when the test started becoming, pretty prevalent that you could get it. But the issue was still that they could only test for it if they suspected it. So
Right.
because it was a special test. So that's why. So there wasn't any that big rush that you talked about, where suddenly tons of people diagnosed. No, it was still slow. But, when Ben was born, the average age of diagnosis was 8. And so, of course, today, individuals are diagnosed in utero. So things have changed dramatically in that regard. And like I said, every time something happened in the media, we would get, many, many, many calls. And, the day after the first 60 Minutes episode, we had 250 phone calls. So those were the things that really, made a difference along the way. But we went from 200 to 300 to 400 to 1,000, and then it's kept jumping from there very quickly.
It's just making me think about when Stella was diagnosed. She wasn't diagnosed until she was 5, and it was somebody like a teacher who said, Stella reminds me of a student I used to teach who had Williams syndrome. And I went out to the car and I grabbed my phone and I Googled it. And I told Ben this. I said, you were the first face that I saw, right? Like when I looked up Williams syndrome and then all the faces after, I was like, this is it. So as much as the fish test was helpful, like in confirming a diagnosis, like the minute that I saw all of that stuff, like I knew that that's what Stella had. And so I guess maybe it didn't change like too much, right? It was more like if you have these 12 things, like you were talking about, you likely have this. There was probably not many people that you were like later found. They're like, oh, we thought you had Williams syndrome, but you really don't.
Well, actually, there were when the fish test first came out. There were individuals, who they found out they had been misdiagnosed, and it was really. It was very difficult for them. So that's why we kept the mission broad as much as we could, because if there were certain things, if you had learning characteristics that matched or medical issues, then we could certainly help whether or not your child had Williams syndrome or not.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I didn't realize that that's sort of why that came to be, but it was because you had some people that thought they had Williams and then all of a sudden they didn't. Ooh, fascinating. And I think it's just interesting to think about that you guys were on the cusp of like the change in history where there were so many people that thought that they had Williams syndrome, but then all of a sudden you created this test that confirmed it. That's, I think, a pretty special moment. Do you have moments like that as you reflect through your career, you're like, these were defining moments that I look back on and I think like, that is crazy I was a part of?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, I mean, I can still remember, it was the Sunday of our then 4-day convention, or 3-day convention. I mean, they were long weekends initially. And in 1992 in Chicago, it was Sunday morning that Colleen Morris was the only speaker that day. And that's when she got up and told us that she had found the missing link. She had found that. And you could hear a pin drop in that room as she went through, what they had gone through to find that needle in the haystack. She said, you have to, I remember she said, if you could take a lunch bag and just jam it full of as much fishing line as you could, possibly imagine could possibly fit in it, and then put, something the size smaller than a pinhead. That's the pointy end, not the blunt end of a pin, somewhere along that line of fish head, and then, or fish line, and then turn out all the lights and put on a blindfold and try to find it. Just by going through that that fishing line, little bit by little bit in the dark, and if you could find, try to find that pinhead, and that's what they had been doing, but they found it, and so it was really pretty phenomenal, and it opened that, started telling, a lot of folks. Obviously, that explained, the cardiac issues, and then as we learned more and more about what elastin could do, so many more things as well. I mean, so that was a huge point, when Carolyn Mervis started to unravel the educational issues was just huge. I can remember, thinking, when Ben was little, we had come so far in that there were some students were beginning to be included a little bit, often incorrectly, but at least there was some talk about it. And he had OT and he had PT and he had speech, and we thought we're so lucky compared to those behind us. And of course, people now are so much luckier than he was. And that just continuum of things that we have learned, there have been so many of those defining moments, along the way. I mean, from the first time, that we hit 1,000 people at a convention for the, that was like a huge deal, to the numbers of calls that when we were on 60 Minutes or NPR or all of those things. And, Awareness Month. I mean, when the first was originally Awareness Week, we sat around thinking, what can we do? What haven't we done? And maybe we could raise a little bit of money, and somebody said, well, we could have a walk. And we're like, yeah, right. We're not the March of Dimes. We're not even, Down syndrome or Easter seals or, the Cancer Society. Who is going to want to come to a walk for Williams syndrome? And, we kept talking and we just said, oh, what the heck? Let's just do it. And if we can have a few walks and we can make, a few $1,000, that would be great. And I mean, that first year we had 25 walks and we made more money than we ever dreamed about. But the whole point was that, oh my gosh, there were 25 walks. They were all around the country. We had, more people involved in Williams syndrome that day than we'd ever had in all of the years, leading up to that. And, within 3 years, we were having 50 walks, and it was Awareness Month. And, $50,000 had become $750,000. We were able to almost raise the budget, the annual budget through the walks, which gave us so many opportunities to do other things with other funding that we had. So it's just opened so many doors. But, and I think every convention was an eye-opening moment because we always learned something new. And just, again, seeing when we went to our first in Cincinnati, there was no such thing as childcare. There were about, there might have been 20 kids there, 25 kids. And, a few parents sort of corralled them in the hallways while we went to, we only had sessions, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning, we got together Friday night and it was over on Sunday. But it was just, to think of how far we've come, from then, all that we have learned, and now all that we still need to learn about adults, that this is why it's so important to have something like the association, and that it be an association with very, very lasting capability, because not just that it brings people together, but it's the way we learn, and we've learned a ton, but there's always more to learn. So
yes. Although, I mean, I do think there is a ton more to learn, and I learn every time I go to a convention. I'm like just floored by the things that I hear and all the work that these researchers are doing. But it's pretty special for you to have been at that moment in time that you were in.
I feel really fortunate to have, had a part in making all of that happen, but also in that just having all of that available, to me personally, for my son, it's everything. So much of what we were always doing was because somebody in the room raised their hand and said, well, what about this? My son or daughter is dealing with such and such. And we'd go, oh, and then I'd go back, start picking up the phone and start, talking to the researchers and what do we know about this? And then, or the educators, and then, finding people like Robin Pegg, who came to help me at camp, and then and then made it her life's work, and others, so many others like her who really have helped. It's such an amazing community, the community. And I feel like one of the reasons why the Williams syndrome community is so strong, it's because of who our kids are, Brent, I'm sitting here, looking at Brendan right now, and it's you guys, who made it all happen, because doctors just became so interested in who you all are, because it's fascinating. When you have individuals that never met a stranger and who quickly become so memorable, then things happen. And so I think we owe so much of it to our kids. I know, Benjamin changed who I am, and I'm sure, most of us are. I mean, I was pretty shy, I mean, I'd never believed I
I
would
do
be
not
doing the
believe
kind
this
of
about
things I'm
you.
doing. Yeah.
I don't believe that. But it made me think something that you were just saying, like, how was that balance? Like, have you been able to now, like, since you've been retired, digest, like, like, I was doing this work and taking care of my son with Williams syndrome. Like, that's a lot to carry at the same time. Do you see now that was hard, or did it just feel so natural in the moment?
It was hard, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes harder than ever. I mean, than others. Obviously, the hardest times were when he was little, because that's when he had 4 heart surgeries, and, we had OT and PT and speech. And I had another, he had a 2-year younger brother who was, unfortunately being dragged along through all of those
Yes.
appointments. And,
Yep.
and I think, when I look back on it, and, Gary and I have often, talked about, I mean, we know, as hard as you try to make things the same for everybody, somebody loses and out. And sometimes, that was Adam, because Adam was a very different kid, and he could do so much more than Bed could. And so we would sort of take him for granted sometimes, not on purpose, obviously. And, but I think it's hard. And I'm sure many parents, can attest to the same thing. It's oftentimes really, difficult to do all of that, to balance it all. But there is so much that happens that it just happens. You just do it, And I was always really fortunate that my job was what it was. I wasn't punching a clock somewhere. If that was the case, it would have been a lot different. But because it was the Williams Syndrome Association, and I didn't have people knocking on the door to come in, 9 to 5. And eventually we had some staff, so that when it was necessary for me to take time, when Ben had his surgeries and all those other things, I could do it. And most of it was because of what the job I had was. It was, I could work remotely before remotely was a thing. And,
Yeah, I guess that's true. I didn't even think about that. Like, that was also, like, that was helpful, because there's no way that a person today, well, in the olden days, probably could do it, right? Like, somebody had to just quit their job.
Right. It would have been very, very, very different. And I didn't work. Like I said, I quit my job when, I was a professional photographer when Ben was born, and he had his first surgery the day I was due back to work from my 6-week maternity leave. I mean, I remember calling them from, the ICU waiting room saying, my son had surgery this morning. I won't be back. And they said, well, wait, we'll give you 2 more weeks. And I said, oh, okay, great. And literally 2 weeks later, he had his second surgery. And that's when he was in the hospital for 3 months. And so obviously at that time, I left my job as a corporate photographer. But, and I didn't do anything until I started volunteering for the Williams Syndrome Association when Ben was 4. I mean, obviously, as a photographer, you always start shooting weddings or this or that, but I wasn't punching anybody's time clock. And, had it not been for the Williams Syndrome Association, I would have been out of work much longer, because like I said, originally it was, it wasn't until I didn't become executive director until 96. So, those first 7 years, it was all volunteers. We were all volunteers. It was just board members, and we were doing the best we could. So I had a lot of flexibility, and that made all the difference.
You were a photographer. Did you, like, that's a lane change, like going from being a photographer to being an executive director. Like that's how did that happen?
I don't know. It just It just did. I mean, but when I was working as a corporate photographer, I could take classes and they would pay for them. So I got my master's in business.
Okay.
And that was in looking at, eventually having my own photography business.
Yes. Okay. That makes
Which of
sense.
course, I didn't do, but all that education came, to good use, obviously, with the Williams Syndrome Association. But it was, this is such a labor of love for me from day one, and I was, helping myself and all of my friends who had similar individuals to my son. Yeah, I don't know, it all just happened.
How was so young life you thought was challenging to balance the career and Ben's needs, and then did it get easier as he's gotten older?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really did. And I think, first off, he's had major health problems periodically along the
Mhm.
way, but never, they were never like 6 months in the hospital or any of
Okay.
those, sorts of major things. And so we could deal with them. And obviously then he became much more involved in school, and his brother was involved. And so it all just, it did become much easier.
Yeah, we like I said, we just had him on, and I love this like living situation that he's in. And I said, well, how did you decide this? And he was like, oh, my mom helped me. So I would love to hear like how you guys decided to like come up with this living situation, and like he was out of state from you, and he's
Right.
like, because you were in Michigan and he was in
He's
Massachusetts,
in
right?
Massachusetts. Yeah, that's probably the hardest part. I mean, for Ben, I mean, Michigan has educational services to age 26. So they're the only state left, in the country.
Yeah.
But what's available, from high school graduation to age 26, it fits the mold perfectly for some kids and not so perfectly for others. And Ben was one of those others where, for a couple years, it was fine. And then it wasn't. And of course, Ben had gone to camp at Belvoir Terrace from day one, the music camp out there. And so I was, in the group of parents who eventually, helped found the Belvoir Terrace Music Academy, or I'm sorry, the Berkshire Hills Music Academy, and became, was on their professional advisory board. And so there was always that option, Ben, do you want to go, do you want to go out and see Berkshire Hills, maybe you want to go there. And for a while he didn't, he had a band, he was in a band and he was doing stuff, and it was good where we were. And then it wasn't. And one year when I asked him, he said yes. And so we came out, to see the academy, and, he just was instantly in love with it, and at that time, all of the residents except for two had Williams syndrome. So
He did not say that.
yeah, early on it was, it's not anything like that anymore, but it was then. It was primarily a residential program rather than a day program, and most of the residents had Williams syndrome. So for him, it was like coming home, and within a year or two, it was clear, he'd come home for Christmas, and then as we, drive him back, and it was a 12-hour drive. So, the closer we would get, the more excited he would get.
Oh,
It was like, it was flipping where was home and where, where he wanted
Yeah.
to be. And, so when he, started talking about he wanted to stay there. And they, of course, had a program where you could stay longer. So he did. And then, his brother decided where he wanted to live, and we wanted
on
Ben
the
to be able,
other end of the
unfortunately, in Portland, Oregon. But,
Yeah.
it just made all the sense in the world that Ben should be able to choose where he wanted to live as well. And, we went through all kinds of testing to prove that he was the decision maker. He had made the decision, had the ability to make a decision like that. And because it had a lot to do with services that he could get and funding and
Yes.
that kind of stuff. So, we found a house and purchased it, and
And he's
had,
living his best life now.
different roommates, along the way. But yeah, I mean, the guys have been together now for several years, and they're a family. It's really, really nice. I mean, there's been rough spots along the way, as different roommates have come and gone. And, I mean, Benjamin suffered from severe anxiety after I retired. He was in a very bad place, for about 18 months. But, and it was hard. It was hard on everybody there because we couldn't bring him home. The Dr. McDougall said, no, he has to get over this in his house or it won't be his house anymore.
Yeah.
So, but, we were really fortunate. I mean, the staff and, Brett and Carl, they did the best they could and they stuck by him. And, Ben's doing great again now. We've come out on the other side. And I think that says a whole lot about who they are and, how fortunate we've been to find the staff that we found. And it's been really, really knock on all the wood here, but it's been a really good thing. And it's, Ben's been there for 8 years now. So it's good.
Yeah. What has been one of the funnest things or one of the greatest things you've done since your retirement?
Well, one of the most, I think, I don't know that there's one great thing, Bren. I think it's been really good to find out that there is, I mean, for me, I think it's something that you alluded to, Jen. I always thought because I was working, 60 hours a week, most weeks, mainly because I just loved what I was doing.
So you love, yep.
But I had always been doing it and I was afraid. I was like, what am I going to do with myself? So just finding out that there are other ways to stay busy and that I can, really balance, really worthwhile activities between, the board work and the charitable, work that I'm doing and having a lot of fun. And, it's like I found this community, which I didn't have for 30 years because I was always at work. So I guess probably the most fun thing that I've done, Brendan, is make new friends. It's, whether you're it doesn't matter if you're 7 or 70, making friends is a good thing. And so I'm really, happy about that. And my husband and I are about to embark on a 14-day vacation to Alaska, which we're pretty excited about. So
That's cool.
yeah, we're going in June. So that'll be that. We're looking forward to that. That'll be the most funnest thing, Brent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It also does. It is funny how it flips at some point. I don't know if you've had it happen yet, but it used to be like I would drop everything to do like work stuff, right? And then now, like if something comes up that's like, I call it work, but it's like whatever I have like volunteer things that I do and I have stuff at school that I do. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can't do that because it's going to interrupt with like my personal, like going to the gym.
I have my schedule.
I can't. Yeah. And so it's just funny how it's reversed that before it was like I had no personal time for myself and like my own things that I need to do for like my self-care. And now I'm like, oh, nope, can't get in the way of the.
That's right. It's really interesting. I was, Gary and I we do trivia on Thursday nights at the local tavern, which is also great fun. A team of, there's 8 of us who were one of the teams. But anyway, we were driving there and I was saying, it's like, it's even amazing to just think about, I'm not in a hurry anymore. I used to be, I was always in a hurry, and it's like, now it's like, okay, well, okay, that's fine. We'll do that now. And then we'll do this later. It's a really different mindset. And I got used to it a lot quicker than I ever thought I would.
I love that. Well, I know that Brendan was telling us how impactful you are. I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast episodes before, he will shout your name from the rooftops.
Thank you, Bren.
Because you made such an impact on his heart.
Yeah, no, if you hadn't pushed me out on that limb, to try and, see what this whole board experience was about, then, I owe a lot to you, so.
Well, I think it, like I said before, it works both ways, Brent, and I was so excited when you became secretary. I was like, all right, that's awesome. It's just, it's great.
It's been real.
And I think that's another one of those defining moments, Jen, is seeing what the individuals are doing now. There's so many different things that everybody is doing. And regardless of where they fall along the spectrum, Brendan's a board member doing amazing things. Benjamin, he's in a very different place along the spectrum, but he does have the ability to connect with people. And, he has 175 music gigs scheduled in 2025. He and
Stop
and
it.
Ed, his music partner, they're doing 4 to 6 gigs a week, and they only work 3 days together. So, and I feel that is so, he can give back to the community in ways that we never thought would be possible. And there are so many other individuals doing all different, kinds of things. And we never dreamed that was going to be possible when back in 1986. And so I think that's another one of those really defining moments, is that we've found a way to unlock their strengths and really give the world these individuals. And that means so much.
And it's like Ben. I mean, I could totally see that. I loved hearing him tell his story about his clown work as well. So is the 175 gigs just music gigs, or are there clown gigs as well?
No, well, that's just music. I mean, the clowns volunteer. Those are volunteers. Parades that he does.
Yeah.
He's involved with a group that does, clowning in parades, and so they've welcomed him into the fold, and he goes. He can't always go with them because they go kind of pretty far from where they are, and sometimes it involves leaving, earlier than my staff just can't get him to all those places.
Yeah.
All the times, but he does as much as he can. And I was so proud of him when I watched the podcast and you asked him, what it is about, clowning. And he said, well, there's a lot of division in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to, to feel good. And he made me so proud, when he said that, but he means it. I mean, it just gives him so much joy,
Yes.
to put on that clown gig and march down those streets. It's great. I mean, he wears those big shoes with
Super
honor.
proudly. He didn't tell us what your clown name is. He said that you went with him a
Oh,
time
I
or
did,
two.
but I never had a name, but
Did you not make it through clown college?
I'm just an apprentice, Jen.
Yeah. Yes. I know. I think that's great though.
It is. And I think that's the hitch, is finding a way to, like I said, unlock that love that they have and then find a way for them to do it. I mean, I think all of the Biddies and Bows and the other, coffee shops that are springing up now have opened so many doors for our kids, because whether they're the greeter or they're making the coffee, I mean, those environments when people are just, coming in the morning, half asleep, coming up and seeing somebody with Williams syndrome and the smile they have, and that ability to brighten a room makes all the difference. So it's the littlest things that can mean so much. When Ben was a camper at Belvoir Terrace. Belvoir Terrace is a very wealthy camp for girls. The individuals, the instructors would be doing music with these kids all summer, and then our kids would come in August for the last week. And I once asked, Ben's drum teacher, what is different about this week from, all summer? And he said, the difference is that when I come into the room, at 8:00 in the morning for my first drum lesson, whoever is there is, hey, Jordan, how you doing? What you got going? Isn't it a great day? It's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. He said at the last camp a couple weeks ago was one of my students' 16th birthday. And her parents deposited a brand new Hummer and brought it up to camp. Surprise, put it, outside the drum studio with a big, huge bow on it. And he said she came up that morning and I said to her, wow, what do you think of your birthday present? And she said, I told them I wanted red. Because I think it was a white.
Well,
That's
big difference from one to the other.
That's so true, though. I mean, I think we even hear about that, like parents. Well, you and I just talked about it, right? Like for me, my life was so defined by my career and my career accomplishments, and I was just like on this it was very like self-focused. Like, I'm not saying you were like that, but you know, for me, I was like that. And then I have this person with Williams syndrome, and I still am a perfectionist, but I say I'm a perfectionist in recovery because then I have this person with Williams syndrome, and they're so incredibly imperfect that I have no choice but to like bring it down, right? And the things that used to give me like happiness, like do not give me the same happiness anymore. Like I find joy in the smaller things, like the simpler things, a slower lifestyle, and those, like you were saying, those moments of authentic happiness. Like Stella gets up and she's just happy about things that are not material.
Yeah.
How can you not love that?
I know. For the last four, Ben calls us every day, either at 8:30 in the morning or 8:30 at night. And you know, for the last 4 days, or for the 4 days leading up to May 1st, he said to me, "Happy almost Williams Syndrome Awareness Month, Mom." And he was just so excited about Williams Syndrome Awareness Month, you know, and that's all it takes. He's just, you know, yeah.
And he's so proud of you. He sent me a message and he said, "Have fun today talking to my mom."
Oh, that's great.
I love that. I love that. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with the community? I have a feeling this will be like the most listened to episode of the year.
I would just say thank you for having me back. You know, it feels really good to be talking to you all and again to be able into position to give a shout out to everybody. I miss you guys all so much, and I have missed you all, and it's really nice to be back. So I thank you for that.
Well, you never left. You just decompressed, right?
Right.
And that is also very important to do, friends, just so you know. Like,
Yeah,
you got to
exactly.
decompress and then you come back and you do your thing. So I love it. And I can't wait to hear more about what you're doing with Camp Blue Skies and all of your other nonprofit stuff. I have a feeling you're busier than you say.
Well, like I said, it's a different kind of busy, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, it is so fun. Oh.
This has been the Starry-Eyed Podcast, presented by the Williams Syndrome Association. The show is hosted by Jennifer Keaton and Brendan Lemieux, and produced by me, Joel Listman. Theme song by Tommy Barbarella and Mariella Elm. Got a question for the show? Email us at podcast@williams-syndrome.org or message us at the Starry-Eyed Podcast page on Facebook. Video version of the podcast available on the Williams Syndrome Association channel on YouTube or on Facebook. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or comment on the video version, and maybe it will be featured on a future episode. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Starry-Eyed Podcast wherever you get your podcast delights.